It's Monday, September 29th, 2025, and after this weekend, we have to have a serious talk about safety, security, situational awareness.
Hi, and welcome to Yeti at Large. This is a channel focused on making the most out of what you have, no matter where you're at. Thanks for tuning in and helping out.
Now, in good faith, I can't keep making videos about cooking and scooters and RVs and interviewing people and having a whole lot of fun without sharing a little something that I know and that I'm really good at. But I want to caution you, what we're going to talk about today is not instruction, it's not a how-to manual, it's an encouragement to go find that instruction and to find that support for your facility. If you have any kind of responsibility at an institution of learning, a retail business, a house of worship, a civic organization, anywhere where two or more are gathered for the same cause, it is mission critical, essential to your core function, that you develop, you renew, you revisit, and you train on your facility's safety plan. There's no excuse for that. Now, who am I to be sharing this with you? I've been developing facility safety plans for houses of worship since the early 2000s. I have commented on large retail infrastructure projects about safety, and we'll talk more about some of those suggestions from those early 2000s. I'm a sworn peace officer in the great state of Arizona. I have participated in riot control and have addressed many of those public disturbance issues. I'm an instructor, and I have taught situational awareness and active shooter training to hundreds of people. A real awakening in my skill set for situational awareness and safety training came in the early 2000s when I chose to tour many facilities in Israel. I learned the value of human intelligence, proper design, and beginning with the end in mind. If it's predictable, it's preventable. I've been on the front lines of this, and I've seen it evolve from the early 2000s to the current state that we're in today. And like I said, this isn't instruction. I'm just sharing some examples and strongly encouraging you to follow the age-old precept of if it is predictable, it is preventable. Now, from a situational awareness active shooter mentality, this organization here has been providing curriculum and teaching and can support you. I strongly encourage you to reach out to them and ask for some support. The overriding precept is very simple. It goes from avoid, meaning if you can leave, you leave. Deny, meaning if you can secure where you're at to prevent entry or to prevent access, and then ultimately defend. If you're left no other choice, you have a right to be safe. You have a right to go home to your family. And if you have to defend, then you do what's necessary. I'm not going to elaborate on that further because it's a full class and there's a lot of material that's very valuable. Please, again, look for entities like these people who provide this training for your facility. I find it hard to believe in 2025 that we still have what we would call soft targets that are vulnerable like what I saw this weekend. Now, with all due respect, let's perform an after-action review or a hot wash of some of the recent tragedies that we've seen, only from a perspective of improvement. We honor the casualties of these events by learning from them, by discussing them honestly, and then implementing the things that we should be doing to keep people safe moving forward to prevent future casualties. So I mean no disrespect. And I'll do it in a form of threes. I was at a naval program graduation a couple years back on the East Coast where I heard the commandant speak, and he gave 3 pieces of advice that he had learned from the Marines on his boat. And they're very simple. Improve your fighting position. Fight from the high ground. Fire on your own target. Now let's talk about improving our fighting position. To a Marine, that typically means digging a hole so that you have a better place to fight from. What the commandant meant was twofold. One, by improving your fighting position, you're engaging in training, education, and you are learning the craft that you are responsible for. Now, if you're responsible for risk management at a facility, security, safety, insurance, faculty, you name it, improve your fighting position by bringing in those additional resources to do those analyses of your facility. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities and where are your threats? SWOT analysis. You can look that up, that's for a different video. Fight from the high ground. Now the Commandant meant this twofold as well. When someone's fighting from the high ground ethically, they know they're rooted in truth and that they're doing important work that's for a good cause. However, it is also probably one of the oldest military precepts, going back to Sun Tzu and Hannibal when he rode elephants. You gotta have the high ground. We have seen tragically too many times recently where a shooter had the high ground. Today's technology with sensors, cameras, thermal imaging detectors, and UAVs, uncrewed aerial vehicles, make controlling that high ground affordable. There is no excuse moving forward. If you have a vulnerability, especially in a large public gathering, double that if it's outdoors. Triple that if there are known threats. You have to control the high ground. At your facility, you cannot allow unauthorized access to the roof or any adjacent buildings that you may or may not have control over, but could definitely build alliances and cooperations with their facilities people. Fight from the high ground. And then finally, make sure you're shooting on your own target. To a Marine, that means that target identification and everyone in the squad has a threat responsibility to address. So make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And if security, safety, risk is part of your wheelhouse, then you need to be bringing in outside support and having those conversations on staff level, leadership level, and employee level in every direction. You may have a safety and security plan. I hope it doesn't have dust on it, because if it does, you need to break it out. And you need to still be thinking in that 540-degree awareness, meaning all the way around you, all the way overhead. Circling back to improving your fighting position, one of the attacks this weekend on the LDS church attempted to breach a brick wall. Now, I know most people would probably pass right over that and say, brick wall is not a point of entry, that is not a vulnerability. We're going to move over to doorways and other things. I've seen many videos where individuals were in interrogation rooms at police departments, left unattended, and escaped the interrogation room by busting through the drywall between the studs. You need to think in 540-degree awareness, all the way around you, all the way overhead. It's twofold. There's people and there's vehicles. That's going to be overwhelmingly the important thing to make sure that you have addressed and you have control over. I learned in Israel very early on the power of human intelligence. I saw something similar very recently. I went to a Christmas service at a house of worship. They had individuals assisting parking. They had individuals greeting people at the edge of the walkways, where I couldn't help but notice they had 4 or 5 ton granite boulders decoratively spaced out and attractive barrier metal fencing. When you got closer to the facility, they had another greeter there reaching out to people and greeting people. They want to make sure that you feel welcome and that it's warm and inviting and that you're a human being. But they are also looking very closely to see those outward warning signs if something doesn't appear correct. We're not going to get into that whole list now. That's for the proper training you're going to seek out later. But that human intelligence is absolutely the most important thing. Second, it goes to that facilities intelligence. I'll never forget in the early 2000s, I was in a design meeting with a retailer discussing building an 88,000 square foot facility, and I was the only person in the room that pointed out how there was a straight shot from the street through the parking lot to the front door. And I said, we've got to cant that. We have to change that because I could be doing 80, 85 miles an hour by the time I hit the front door. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Today, you look at any facility, I want you to measure when you walk in the front door. What kind of access is there to be able to use a vehicle as a weapon? Look at the Target stores. Those big round balls out front aren't just decorative and part of their logo. They're designed to impede vehicle entrance and make it a pedestrian-only area. These are just a couple of very small examples. The most important thing that you can do today is to start having those real conversations. I would encourage you, beyond having those discussions, build these teams. Build these alliances with other like businesses or houses of worship. Leverage those resources. Somebody once famously said it takes $1 to defend a dime. Well, until recently, it was more like $100 to defend a penny. And you can't possibly predict every threat that you can face. But if you can eliminate all of that low-hanging fruit and harden your facility to a point where you're going to predictably remove a large portion of the threats, you may not be an attractive target to a random act of violence. I'm sorry we have to have this discussion today, but I couldn't sit on my hands anymore and not speak up. If anybody wants further information or further support, please leave me a message, comment, or shoot me an email. I will not be doing safety training for you because you need to be with a group and an organization that is authorized, supported, licensed, and gives you that credibility to make sure that your program is grounded. But I can certainly help direct you towards some of those resources. And if nothing else, we can talk about the questions you have, and maybe I can help fill in the blanks on a few more questions you should be asking. You need to be prepared. You're entitled to gather boldly, to speak in peace, and to robustly live out your mission, no matter what your group or organization or gathering is. I just want you to do it in safety so that you can continue to do the awesome and excellent work that you do for your community. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeti at large.